Yo, what's poppin', guys? Sizzle here, and since my last video in Overwatch, which is when they introduced perks, I gave my thoughts on it. They've dropped their first patch related to perks, which you can fully read through if you want right now, as I'm going over it real quick on screen. But I'm just going to give my kind of synopsis of it as to what most of this actually means to the end user in just a second, because honestly, you don't need to know every minor individual change here. All you need to know is, on the whole, the stuff that I just kind of scrolled through right there, didn't actually read out loud. Generally, what it did is it took perks that were weak and made them stronger. Not all the weak perks and made them stronger, but just a lot of the perks that felt a little bit weaker compared to like the busted ones like Ana or Torb or Sojourn or whatever. Right, a lot of those more broken perks, they toned them down. Kept those as is, and then took the ones that were toned down and toned them up, which is just, yeah. I mean, it's a little crazy, honestly. Not how I was hoping they would do things. If you go back to my initial reaction to perks a month ago, basically my take was they felt shockingly natural. They felt like they belonged in the game pretty well. But they had the problem where a lot of the perks were too strong and felt too overbearing, where it almost felt like the perks were so good that it made you so you couldn't swap character, right? The idea of like a more weaker perk system, right, something like the Reinhardt perks, where whenever he shields, he starts self-healing a little bit faster, and whenever he gets a pin kill, he got a bit of temporary shield health, right? Stuff like that is like minor. It's enough to make you really think about if you actually want to swap character, because you lose out on some nice things that you won't have if you go swap character. But they're not so major that if you really need to make the swap, that it'll really stop you and halt you in your tracks. Versus stuff like Ana's, where when she gets nano, she can self-nano herself, and instead of having one anti-grenade when she throws it, she gets two for double the damage, double the anti. That stuff is so absurdly strong that you really have to think about, like, do I really want to swap off Ana to, let's say, go like Mercy to go heal one of my DPS, when I'm losing out on both the character and these perks that are absurdly strong, like game-changingly strong. And on the whole, I thought that was kind of negative for the system, because at least the ways the developers talked about, the way things were described, wow, I'm fucking ass. But at least the way things were described, the way I understood them, that, wow, I just can't hit a shot. Holy shit, I'm washed. Finally hit something. Sorry, I had to lock in for like 5 seconds there. I literally was hitting 0 shots at all on Hanzo. I'm just kind of letting down my wrist. I can't be doing that in quick play. But anyway, the way the developers described it is they were saying they wanted perks to be something to disincentivize counter-swapping. And they implemented things in a shockingly natural way. That was my initial take as well. It felt shockingly smooth to play within the game. I really thought they'd be super jarring, really take you out of the gameplay as you're selecting them, or really drastically change the way the game is played. And on the whole, they didn't do that, outside of a few really overpowered outliers, right? And I was hoping the balance patch, they would just tone down everything, bring it all to Reinhardt's perks level, but instead they did a Blizzard classic of toning up everything. So the broken perks stayed broken, and the bad perks are now starting to get more broken, which on the whole makes perks a lot more essential to gameplay, and not only disincentivize counter swapping, it basically makes it impossible. So let's say if I'm on DPS now, right, I'm playing my Reaper or something, and I have both my perks, and they have an enemy Pharah, I'm like disincentivized from trying to help my team with the Pharah, even though that is the DPS's problem and the DPS's job, purely because my perks are so strong. That's a real problem in my opinion. I think that is a real issue, and hopefully in the next balance patch they start nerfing shit again and bring it all down, because I really think they have a pretty neat and functional system in place, and they just need to actually, make them a little bit more fair and a little bit less impacted, because they matter a bit too much now, which is a problem, at least in my opinion. I know some people agree, some people like how drastically changed things, they want every perk to be broken, they want to enjoy their character, and, power to them, but for me and for everyone else, it's just obnoxious to have to fight a Mercy Sojourn every game, because Sojourn is back to Season 1 levels of broken with some of the perks she has right now, which is just not fun to fight. It's really It's really not fun to fight. A lot of my characters in particular kind of got screwed over where they have the weaker perks and everyone else gets the strong ones. Right, so like Malga, for example, got some really nasty strong perks, and I play Roadhog, Winston, and Reinhardt mainly. Those are like my big three. You know, depending on the day of the week, I play different ones. Right. And by buffing the shit out of Malga and having him have all the Giga buff perks, it's like not only do they enjoy counterpicking that type of shit, once they do, they get even stronger, and I have even less counterplay as whatever character I'm on. It's just, it really, I don't know, I got the short end of the stick on pretty much every character I play when it comes to these perks. I also enjoy Hanzo and Junkrat, who got some of the worst perks as well. And I actually think the level their perks at are good. I actually think they're good for the game, but everyone else is getting all the busted shit, and I think that's bad for the game. If Hanzo or Junkrat or whatever got a broken perk, I'd be complaining about them as well. But I think if everything gets toned down to Reinhardt's level of perk strength, then we're in a good place there. Now, the other thing they did add with that patch, with those patch notes about perks, which I think on the whole are negative, it's net negative, it's, yet again, kind of like I said with the perks, it's bringing the games in a direction that I personally don't like. I personally think is a lot less fun. But unlike that, the 6v6 mode is really, really fucking cool. I think they did a phenomenal job with that. Because here's the big problems with 6v6 that they were trying to address, right? A lot of people like 2-2-2 in 6v6, right? 2 tanks, 2 DPS, 2 supports, because then you can even them out of everything, a really balanced team comp, and a really fun game feel. The problem with that, though, is you force people to queue up specific roles in order to get there, which meant the queue times were atrocious compared to other formats, right? Forced role queue just will make queue times way longer, and that's something really notable. It's something you'll notice in Marvel Rivals. You will literally hit 5-second queues in that game, partially because their system cares a little bit less and just will get you in the game faster, which I think is a net positive, but partially because it's open queue. They don't have to find 2 tank players, 2 support players, and 2 DPS players. They just have to find 6 players, and it's up to them to figure out what to do. Which will just make queue times faster. However, with raw open queue, generally what happened is because of their high health pools, it often became 3 tanks, 3 supports. And that made DPS players, which is the majority of Overwatch players, mind you, it made it so they couldn't play their role. Right? They were forced to get off of DPS because everyone else was on 3 tanks, 3 supports, and 3 tanks and 3 supports destroy DPS to the point where they're all pretty much unplayable. And that's a real problem as well. You don't want to leave the majority of your player base, which is, like I said, DPS players. Right? Statistically, it always has been. They're like, I think like 45% of the player base or something, despite being only a third of the roles. You don't want to leave them out to dry. You don't want to fuck over like half of your player base just to make the game a little bit more fun for the other half. So what they did is they met in the middle. They made it open queue, but the biggest problem for DPS players was the abundance of tank players, because a lot of high health targets make it so you literally cannot kill anything because they all have like 500 health, and there's like 6 of them. They have like 5 defense matrices, 6 bubbles, a shield, a 3rd shield, like whatever the fuck. Right, a lot of stuff that basically stopped DPS players from playing. This guy does not like me. What the fuck? I swear, every time this Reaper's gotten old, he's just hunting me down. But anyway, but that's like the other problem, right? Is it yeah, DPS players couldn't play the game with raw open queue, but if you go to role queue, which is the 6v6 we had before, queue times are too long, and most people don't like that. So they met in the middle, and they made it 2 tanks maximum open queue, which does allow for some goofy-ass comps like 2 tanks, 4 supports, but on the whole, it makes it so you pretty much always, I mean, even if it's not fully optimal, you can always run a DPS, a tank, or support as you see fit. The tank my fucking awful voice crack. The tank players get to have their favorite stuff back as well. Excuse me. That's crazy. This guy fucked me up. I'm gonna go cash him on the other side. Let's see. Oh, he's not going back? Interesting. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. But they made it so there's 2 tanks maximum, which still allows for some funky comps like 4 supports, 2 tank, which is actually quite strong, I feel. And every time I've run it so far, I've won out of a sample size of 10 games. I've won both of them where I did that. But it gets the tank players what they like, which is their tank synergies, right? Like a Ryan Zarya, the Winston Diva, things like that. Like the really funnest parts of playing tank, at least for me, and why I would queue open queue a lot of the time, even when it was 5v5 open queue that no one played, just because those tank synergies are so fun. It's a much better way to tank than normal roll queue, where you're the only tank and everyone's just shooting you on every roll and every cooldown is getting thrown your way. Right, you're getting anti-10 times slept 11, created another 5, they're also counter-picking you and going like Reaper if you're on Hog and shit. Or, you know, generally they just counter-pick you and you are the sole focus of both teams, and it's really stressful and not fun. When you have a second tank, they have to pick and choose how they fight, and it really makes the tanking experience a lot more fun. By making it 2 tanks max open queue, it makes the DPS players happy and support players happy because they can just play their role. Makes the tank players happy because they get their tank synergies, but it avoids the issue of having, you know, more than 2 tanks a game and making it so DPS don't get to play the game. And it also makes queue times way better. I mean, hopefully this test goes well. I think it is so far. Most of my 5v5 like only friends have actually been primarily playing the open queue game mode, and a lot of the people I know from Overwatch 1 are also just hopping on specifically to play the 6v6 mode. And it's just a really, really fun time. I mean, I've played it. I stopped playing the game. I didn't even do really placements this season outside of, you know, trying to do my open queue games to get that little open queue weapon charm for top 500. And then they dropped this mode, and I've already played. It dropped like 3 days ago. And I think I've already played like 11 games of it. Which is more Overwatch than I played in the last month and a half. And it's going to keep going up from there. I will be honest, it's very, very fun playing effectively 2-2-2 again. I mean, it's technically not 2-2-2. There's a lot of supports. There's maybe more supports than DPS now, it almost feels like, at least in my games, where I've been getting 3 supports a lot of the time with 2 tanks and then 1 extra DPS. But either way, the queue times are amazing, the tank synergy being back is super great, and on the whole, I'm just having a grand old time. You're really, really having a fun time, basically reliving kind of what Overwatch 1 mostly felt like, with some minor hiccups, of course, because, you know, hero perks and all that exist, and that obviously changes things. But on the whole, the 6v6 patch is really cool. The perk update I don't like at all anymore, right? Before, I thought it was kind of smoothly updated, and if they toned stuff down, it would be pretty cool, pretty fun. But since then, they've toned things up instead of down, and that's just not good. And knowing Blizzard, they're never going to actually fully go down. Right, Blizzard's balancing philosophy 90% of the time is just keep buffing stuff until people complain, and then Giga nerf only the thing they complain about most and leave everything else unchanged. So there's still going to be broken stuff, and then they go back to buffing more and more random things. And if people don't talk about it, they buff it right back. Buffing more than nerfing is definitely good philosophy, but in a system like the perk system, I think it's a net negative, because perks, a lot of them on most characters, really have the effect of stopping counterplay. Right? They'll actually make on some characters matchups that you previously lost. If you have a perk, now you win the matchup, which just isn't great in my opinion. But yeah, on the whole, that's my thoughts on things. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree. You know, what your personal thoughts are on this whole update. They also brought back loot boxes, pretty cool, but you know, it's just cosmetics. I never really cared if they were paid in the first place. I just didn't buy them. But yeah, that's that. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.